Hello and good day to you. Today we are going to make beans pudding, also known as moi moi, steamed beans pudding. To make it, we'll be using Cannellini beans. This will prevent us from washing the skin of the beans. Like those people that use black eye beans, they'll need to wash the skin, because if not, the beans pudding is going to be grayish. So some people don't like, they prefer it to be white, so they have to wash the skin. But I'm a very lazy cook and I decided to use Cannellini, and I've been using it since. So use Cannellini for mine. I don't need to wash the beans. It will come out, the pudding will come out white. Alright, so we use Cannellini Beans, Scotch Bonnet, onions if you desire. I really don't eat onions, especially if it's cooked. But because it's going to be grounded, I can add it. So if you have people like me in your home, you can grind, because we are grinding everything together, you can add it because it's going to be grounded. It's optional, so it's not necessary. I don't eat onions. But for those in my home, because it's going to be grounded, I'm adding it. And we need seasoning cubes. I just put in one there. I'm using Maggi seasoning cube. I'll just put one. This is optional too. If you want, you can put prawns. You can omit them. But for the prawns, I'm going to dry them before I use them. I'm not putting them fresh like so. I'm going to dry them. Then, if you want to spice the beans pudding a little, you can add boiled eggs. I have 4 here. And we need oil, so I'm using sunflower oil. Then we need salt, so that's the salt over there. Before we start, and the equipment we'll be needing, and for the equipment we need a very big pot because of the plates that I'll use for the steaming. So I'll just show you some of the equipment and explain through. So we need this very big pot. Depends on how many beans pudding plates you need to put in. We need a soup ladle. Soup ladle to enable to put more, to scoop the mixture quickly. We need a spatula to mix through when we add the seasoning, the oil, and every other thing we will need to add, and to stir the mixture properly. We need a mixing bowl. We're going to use it for 2 things. One is after we finish grinding the moi moi. We're going to use it for 2 things. One is after we finish grinding the beans and we're adding it to mix it. And the second one, which is the first step we need to take, is to soak the beans in it. You know, the Cannellini beans is a bit hard, very strong, and the blender is for, it's not although it's like an ice blender, it's I'll talk you through about blender. So we need to soak the Cannellini beans. We need plates, and not just plastic plates like that. It needs to be plates that can go through the microwaveable plates, so that it can withstand the heat. You are going to steam it. You don't want the plates to melt. I bought this one from Lidl. They're about 13 inside, so I'm just going to show for anyone that really wants to buy same. You can have microwaveable plates. All right, so these are some of the, I think there are two of this other bigger one, then this one large one, and about, you see, 8 of this also. I think it's 8 of these small. So I'll use the 8 of the small ones. I might have extra, but I don't know yet. So these are the bowls we'll be using to steam. We'll need the covers because we place one inside on top the other, and then we place them in the pot. And the pot, we need water because we're going to put the water in the pot, just little water that will help us to steam. So as we do the process, I'll still talk you through. This is just for you to gather whatever item you need. And not of all, we need a blender. This blender is really strong. It's a juice extractor along with a blender. So the juice extractor unit is out. That's why we have this metal here to clip the juice extractor. But this blender, most blenders do get spots when they grind beans. That's because beans use this pressure when you have to grind them, and because of the texture for beans pudding, or when you want to make beans ball or so, the blender gets spoiled because beans pudding don't need watery mixture. The mixture has to be thick. I think you can use an ice blender, any blender that can crush ice cubes. You can use those kind of blender. You really need a powerful blender. Most blenders do get spots, so bear that in mind. You might be harming your blender. So what most people do is to soak their beans. It becomes soft. But if you have a very powerful blender that can crush ice, then you can use it for beans. It really works well, because the blender has been built to do a very heavy job. All right, so I'll put that aside, and then we'll start preparing for our beans pudding. So I'll take the shrimp, the prawns, I just put some on a baking tray lined with baking parchment or baking paper. Don't need much, just a little. Then I'll put it in the oven to dry a little for, I have to check it. It's a bit light brown. It's not, that freshness is not there, but not too dry. And I'll put the oven at 150 degrees Celsius, middle layer of the oven, so that I don't get burnt. So while it's getting dry, bring in our mixing bowl. So while it's getting dry, I'll bring in our mixing bowl, and I'll just pour half of it. I'm not using everything. I just want half of the Cannellini beans. And you can see how hard it is. So just pour water in, enough to cover it, and should be more than the beans a little. You can see the level. You can leave that overnight because it takes time for the beans. It's a very dry beans, and it will take time for it to sip water. Since I'm not using a dry blender or a mill, I'll need to make it moist. So we'll leave that for about should I say like 10 hours or so. We'll check it from 4 hours from now. We start checking it. But if you want to do it, if you want your beans in the morning, you just have to soak it overnight. You can also use warm water to soak it. You can use cold water to soak it. Some people prefer warm water, some prefer cold water. So while it cools down, so while it soaks, we are going to just tidy up everywhere and prepare ourselves for the beans in some hours time. So our beans is soaked. I'm just going to pick so our beans is soaked. We'll go closer to see it, and I'll pick one of the seed, and I have one raw one, that's one not soaked. I'm going to compare the two so that you see. So this one, the one on the right, has been soaked. The one on the left, or the smaller one, hasn't been soaked. So that is how big it has expanded when we soaked it. So what we need to do next is to drain the water from the beans. So I'm just going to drain that off. And I'll put the beans in the blender. Add 1 Scotch bonnet and onions, half onions or quarter. I wanted to use quarter, but decided that okay, let me just make it half. So there we have that. Take this off the way. Before we grind it, you will need to wash and prepare your plates. So I've washed the plate and the covers. I'm going to put them to one side. The wax surface. We need a little to add water to it, so I'll just add a little water. Let me say I'll add 1 pint of water. That's all. You can use 1 pint or half liter. That's fine. And we'll grind. Will you setting one first? Sorry, I didn't say it before I started. Will you setting one first? That because we want you to chop the beans. Then we'll take it to setting 2 to smoothing, then come back to 1, and then we'll leave it on 2. As I said earlier, you need a blender that can do ice block, that can crush ice crusher blenders. Does that because beans do spoil most blenders. And we'll leave it to stop. Then we'll set it back at 1. So that's all, and it's ready. So bring in our mixing bowl. Set this now. So bring in our mixing bowl. We're going to pour mixture in. And then with this spatula, I'm going to scrape the rest. You can use little water to rinse the others in. We still have much there. I'm not going to let them waste. Oh, this blender is heavy. Wow. Okay, now we have it. Going to bring the prawns in, the dried prawns, slightly dried prawns. Okay, no, not now. That's not your time for that. Okay. So now we have the beans. I'll do the seasoning, which is make sure you crush this seasoning to a very smooth. Wow, this one is kind of hard. Okay. If you can't crush it smooth, you can put it in water to dissolve, then put it in. You don't want it in lumps because it's not going to dissolve in there. It's just going to be in one part of the beans, and you don't want that. So crush it to powder, or you can put it, dissolve it in warm water. With the soup ladle, I'm just going to add, can be less than a spoon or just 1 spoon. So I'm using less than, just a little less. Let me bring it closer so that you see. We don't want the oil floating. So that's enough. And we'll stir. Before we forget, we need salt. So I'm just going to get the salt. A pinch of salt. Just a little is enough. Don't add too much salt because you can't take it out. You can have a taste of it if you want to, but I'm not going to do that. So I'll bring in the dried prawns. If you have this is good for vegetarians. But if you have meat lovers in your house, you can add prawns. You can separate it. You can add prawns to theirs. It's not necessary you must mix the prawn in here. You can in the main mixture. You can add prawns to their own when you're dishing or scooping into each bowl. You can differentiate them with different should I say compliments or accompaniment, but I'll just add the prawns in straight. Slightly dried. And we'll keep on stirring. Okay, that's fine. Clear this off. So I have little still stock in the blender. Just going to slightly rinse it and add this just a little water. Added little water to get it off. So I'm going to stir it, mix the water in. We are ready to serve. Before we start dishing onto our plate, we'll put our cooker on and we're going to get the big pots. So this is the pot and we need water in it. Some people do add their plate, add the pudding plate in before they start pouring the water so that you'll know the level, but you can just put little and leave it in the pot to start. So I just put a cup of water. It's a very big pot, I think about 26 centimeters in width. So you can see it's a very big pot. I'll just zoom out a bit so that you can see that it's very big. Put that on the cooker. You can use any setting for it. So I'm going to put my cooker on 5 or 6 because 6 is higher, so I'll leave it on 5 or 6. Let me get the plate and start serving it. Let's not forget your pot should have a cover because you're going to cover it and steam it. so that it can stain. I know, just serve a spoon. I've just finished serving the 8 plates. I'm going to add just a little into each one. And if you want, if there's too much and you want to scoop them properly, you can use the spatula. It helps to get the bowl clean. Also, tapping the spoon in the bowl releases a lot of them. So with the boiled, here's the boiled eggs. Here are the boiled eggs. Have knife, and I'm going to just cut in half and put it on top. Oh, okay. This is optional too, just like the prawns. Optional, and the egg. Sorry, and the onions. This is the first time I'm putting onions in it. So here we have just trying to dry my hands. Okay. So now that we've finished, just take a look. Okay, we have them. If you have, as I said earlier, if you have a vegetarian or a vegan in your house, you won't put the egg in theirs or the prawns in theirs. You just give them the main one like that without the egg or the prawns. Just going to cover each and every one, and we'll place them in the pan and steam. When it's ready to be solid, and we have to be checking the pan so that the water don't dry. The water dries, your bowl is going to, the plate is going to melt. Just go to the cooker. So the pot in there, I'm just going to place them. If you're putting the pudding bowl before you put in water, just make sure it's at a very low level, like let me say half of the bowl. That's all right, because you know it's going to boil. put this. So I can take about 3. Is this one bigger? But I know I did. I can enter. So, okay, what I'll do, let's see if I can arrange it first before I make sure they're properly closed, because we don't want water getting into it or into them. Too tight, can't go in. So I'm going to just put 6, 8. I'll add the other 2 together, because it's going to take about an hour plus to get it. So I'll just add my spatula. I'll add 2 together. Good thing is that it can be sliced, so I can slice it. Let me bring the other egg out before someone takes it. So I'm going to just adjust add a little into this one. So I've just added, I just want 1 cooking, I don't want to go for parts cooking. So I've doubled the quantity, because 2 were remaining. It would be too much stress for me to do the second one like that. So I'm just going to I wanted to make more, but so I'm lazy for that. So I'm just going to add this to this. Oh. going to put this in, and here that's the last one, and the cooker, and then we'll cover, the pot, and it's going to steam. It's going to steam for an hour plus. We'll come back in 30 minutes to just check the level of the water, and if it's dry, we'll add. If it's almost dry, we'll add some, but that should be enough. That water should be enough for it for about 45 minutes or so. So here it's already ready. I'm just going to open it, and you will see how thick it is. You can see that it's not running anymore. I'll just slightly turn it over. I don't want to fall on my hand, so I'll put it in a plate. You can see how thick it is. I just want to present it so that you see how thick it is, and it can come out clean. Oh, the egg part. I have to be careful next time. Okay, that's a nice one. You can see, looking at the inside, you can see that it's well cooked. There's no bean mixture running out. So that's how to know it's well cooked. Now just cut a little piece. So here, it's good for pudding, beans pudding, also known as moi moi. It's good for, you can eat it with rice. You can eat it like that. You can eat it with custard. So a lot of people have different how they eat it. Different type of rice. You can even eat it with white rice or jollof rice. You can eat it with custard. And many more varieties that you can eat the beans pudding. It's just beans. So here we have our beans pudding, also known as moi moi. Just going to open. I'll take a closer look. It can be eaten like so, or alternatively eat with rice. I'm going to enjoy mine with jollof rice. So I've served myself a plate of jollof rice. I'm going to just scoop it out and put it there. Thanks for joining me for this. And here we have our delicacy. You can eat it with custard. You can eat the beans pudding with custard, and you can eat it with rice or some other. I really don't know about much varieties, but remember, it's just beans. You can eat it with rice, you can eat it with custard. So thanks for joining me for this me and my home cooking. Thanks for joining me for this video of preparing beans pudding, also known as moi moi, using Cannellini beans. Until next time, Happy cooking. Bye for now.